Today we're going to do a recap of our portfolio performance at UFC 325 in Sydney. 5 fights, 5 model trees, and 1 brutal question every betting analyst has to answer after a UFC card. Did we actually read the fights correctly, or did we just get lucky when the tickets cashed? Because it's one thing to say, I went 3 for 5 on the winners. It's another thing to say, I built the correct outcome trees and I went 4 for 5 on the bets that were designed to survive variance. That's what UFC 325 really was for us. Not a perfect night, not a disaster, a very specific kind of proof of concept night. The kind of event that exposes why most bettors lose and why we're building something different here. Because if you watched UFC 325 casually, you probably remember the big headlines, who won, who lost, and which fights surprised you. And you saw why the probabilistic value bet isn't just a buzzword or a catchphrase, it's a survival system. Today's recap, we're not going to scorecard everything. We're not going to beat ourselves up. What we're here to do is, as professionals, we're going to highlight what the model got right, why the reads were strong, how the fight trees played out, and what the card taught us about building a stronger portfolio going forward. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why 4 out of 5 on the probabilistic bets matters more than a casual 3 out of 5 on the winners headline. Because UFC 325 was one of those nights where the fight outcomes moved, but the underlying logic held. And that's the whole game. All right. Let's start with the fight that set the tone immediately, because it ended the way we said it would, just not the finish that we expected. Salkilld versus Mullarkey. This is where our model came in with the cleanest thesis on the card. Front-loaded volatility, round 1 violence. We said Salkilld was the side, we said it ends early, we called KO TKO in round 1. And the probabilistic value bet, the one we designed to capture in this environment, was Salkilld inside the distance. The actual result was Salkilld wins round 1 by submission. Now let's talk about why this was a win for our process. Because the casual viewer sees KO prediction, but the sub happened and thinks that's a miss. But the professional lens sees something more important. We nailed the winner, we nailed the timing, we nailed the environment. Our entire read was Mullarkey is most vulnerable early and Salkilld is a front-loaded finisher. That's exactly how the fight behaved. Round 1 violence, fast resolution, no extended veteran grind, and no late Mullarkey swing. The method just came from a different lane, which is normal variance in MMA. Here's the key. That's exactly why our value bet was inside the distance. Because if we're right that the fight ends early, we don't need to pretend we know whether the finish is punches or a choke. We just need to capture the outcome tree. And the inside the distance cashed cleanly. So Salkilld versus Mullarkey is the perfect opening example of what we're building. We're not trying to cosplay as fortune tellers. We're trying to map the most likely fight environments and then the bet angles that pay us when those environments show up. That's a strong start. And then we walked straight into the most dangerous type of fight to predict, Teixeira versus Tuivasa. Our model leaned Teixeira. We called KO TKO in round 1, and we flagged the cleanest value angle as under 1.5 rounds because the environment was binary heavyweight violence. The actual result? Teixeira wins by unanimous decision. That result slapped us and probably everyone else in the face. But we still nailed that winner. And heavyweight winner accuracy matters more than most divisions because the market is constantly collapsing around narrative. We stayed disciplined in that sense. We picked a younger, longer, cleaner range striker against an aging pocket brawler. That's a pattern that wins over time. And Teixeira did win. Of course, that under 1.5 didn't land, and yes, our finish thesis didn't show up. But this is the kind of fight that becomes a teaching moment without turning into a self-own, because what happened is an outlier heavyweight outcome. Sometimes the bigger prospect doesn't take the bait. Sometimes the bigger, younger fighter chooses control over chaos, and sometimes binary violence turns into risk-managed minutes. That doesn't mean the analysis was trash, it means the fighter chose a different path than the one the market expected. We missed the finish environment here, but we were on the correct side. And side matters because if you're right on the side consistently, you can rebuild the method layer and still win long term. Now, the next fight is the cleanest example of how we can read the environment perfectly and still lose the side. And it also shows why our probabilistic layer is not optional. Ruffy versus Fiziev. This was one of the most aggressive calls on the card for us. We leaned Fiziev, we called KO, TKO in round 2, and our probabilistic value bet was fight doesn't go the distance. The actual result? Ruffy wins by round 2 TKO. Now, listen closely because this is the difference between casual and professional analysis. We were right about the fight environment. We were right about the fight ending. We were right about the timing. We literally called a round 2 finish. We just picked the wrong side. And that might sound like yeah, but who cares type of thing. But it's actually massive because it means our read of how the match works, the pace, the danger lanes, the volatility was correct. The fight did not randomly become something else. It was always a finish fight. It always had round 2 collapse potential. It was always a spot where one guy would get broken or clipped once the rhythm shifted. And our probabilistic bet of the fight does not go the distance cashed. That matters because it's proof we're building something that survives variance. We didn't get paid on the winner side, we got paid on the environment we forecasted. And the reason this is so important is simple. In portfolio betting, you don't always need to be right on the exact side if your structure captures the correct environment consistently. That's how you reduce drawdowns. That's how you keep nights alive. Now, the next fight is one where the model crushed it. Because not only did we call the winner, we called the exact round the fight ends, and even when the method varied, the value bet absorbed it perfectly. This is Saint-Denis versus Hooker that we're talking about. Our main pick was Saint-Denis. We picked a submission in round 2, and the value bet here was Benoit Saint-Denis inside the distance. The actual result, Saint-Denis wins in round 2, but by TKO. So let's talk about this like pros. We nailed the winner. We nailed the BSD, Benoit Saint-Denis finishes thesis. We nailed the round 2 resolution, and our probabilistic bet, Benoit Saint-Denis inside the distance, cashed exactly the way it's designed to cash. This is what we mean when we say variance absorber. Because whether Benoit Saint-Denis finishes by sub or finishes by ground and pound, the key idea is once he establishes the suffocating phase, Hooker breaks. And that's exactly what happened. This is a massive credibility fight for the model because it shows what the scorecard is actually measuring. Not will he specifically land a submission, an arm triangle, rear naked choke, whatever, but does the matchup produce a one-way pressure cycle that ends the fight? We were on the right side of the pressure cycle. We were on the right side of the timing, and we got paid because of that. Now, going into the main event, we had a thesis that was intentionally uncomfortable because it wasn't a popularity pick. It was an aging curve pick. And this is where UFC 325 becomes the best advertisement for probabilistic betting you could ever ask for. Volkanovski versus Lopes 2. Our main card pick was leaning towards Lopes. It was tight, it was a 50-50 split, but leaning towards Lopes. We called a KO or TKO in round 2. And the probabilistic value bet here was the clean tree split. It was Volk decision or Lopes KO. Because in our model's world, this fight didn't have a messy middle. If Volk wins, he wins minutes. If Lopes wins, he wins violence. The actual result, Volkanovski wins by unanimous decision. So yes, main pick missed. Wrong winner, wrong finish, wrong round. But now here's the part that matters. Our probabilistic bet still cashed. And it cashed for the exact reason we built it. It recognized the true outcome tree. Volk didn't win by KO and Lopes didn't win by minutes. And so instead of forcing ourselves into one fragile outcome here, we bet the 2 dominant branches of reality. That's how you stay alive on nights when the main narrative doesn't hit. And for you guys, this is the biggest takeaway of the entire card. Even when we missed the main event side, we still got paid because our framework respected how the fight was actually likely to resolve. That's professional. That's not praying, coping, that's mapping. Now let's put the card together in numbers because the numbers tell the story casual bettors never want to hear. Primary winners were 3 out of 5. We hit Salkilld, we hit Teixeira, and we hit Saint-Denis. Probabilistic value bets were 4 out of 5. Salkilld inside the distance hit, fight not going the distance for Fiziev versus Ruffy hit, Benoit Saint-Denis inside the distance hit, Volk by decision or Lopes by KO hit, and the only one that was missed was the under 1.5 rounds in the heavyweight tilt. If we're talking about building a system that survives in the real world, 4 out of 5 on the variance removal layer is the headline that we're talking about here. That's the layer designed to keep you from getting destroyed by method variance. And method variance showed up everywhere on this card. We predicted KO in multiple spots and got subs or TKOs. We predicted subs and got TKOs. We predicted an early heavyweight finish and got a controlled decision. We predicted a challenger finish and got a champion minute win. That's UFC. That's why most people get washed, because they bet fragile narratives. We're building outcome trees that respect how fights actually behave. So when we say, my reads weren't bad, my trees were wrong, that isn't spin, it's literally supported by the results. Now, was it a perfect night? No. 2 fights swung the overall outcome. Fiziev losing hurt because it was the wrong side even though the environment was correct, and Volk winning the decision hurt because the main pick leaned toward the aging curve and the finish path. But even with those misses, we still show why that framework is legit. We cashed the probabilistic branch in the main event, we cashed the environment bet in Fiziev and Ruffy, and we avoided the classic trap of being dead because one story didn't land. Now here's the recap, the so what part. So what does UFC 325 teach us? It teaches us something that's super important when it comes to portfolios. Probabilistic bets should be the parlay backbone because they absorb method variance. They survive the sub-KO chaos. They let us stay alive when the fight ends in the other quote-unquote dominant branch. And we also need strict rules around concentration and correlated parlay depth. Because when a portfolio gets too dependent on one anchor outcome, one failure point kills multiple tickets. That's not an analysis problem, that's a construction problem, and that's a good thing because construction is fixable. The framework is right, the trees are right. We just upgrade that architecture and then you see the result. And that's what separates a betting hobby from a betting operation. Now let's land the plane with a forward takeaway. UFC 325 didn't prove we're perfect, it proved something more valuable. Our read of fight environments is strong enough to cash 4 out of 5 probabilistic value angles even when the method variance gets weird and even when a main event pick flips. That is the entire goal here, guys, because if we can consistently map environments and consistently capture the clean branches, we don't need to be perfect. We just need to be repeatable, and repeatable is how you win long term. So here's what happens next. We take the UFC 325 recap here, we apply the upgrades immediately, and we roll into the next event with a stronger portfolio backbone, more structure, less fragility, cleaner parlay correlation rules, and the same scorecard system that keeps putting us on the right branches. So comment below which fight surprised you more, Teixeira turning a binary violence spot into a decision, which was mind-blowing, or Volk showing he can still win minutes over 5 rounds. Because those 2 outcomes are exactly why most people gamble and why we build these trees. I'll see you on the next one.